You are listening to How to Get Over Your Ex, episode number 164. I don't know who I am after my breakup. Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, breakup coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. Hello, my beautiful brave hearts. How is everyone doing? I am so excited to be here today and to help anyone who might be struggling right now with just feeling stuck, lost, confused, directionless, or maybe even like purposeless. Like, why am I here? What's my purpose? And I know this can come up a lot after breakups, especially after, maybe you've put your heart and soul into becoming the person you wanted your partner to want. Like, they're like, ooh, I did this a lot with fantasy football. I went all in and I was like, yes, of course I love fantasy football. It's such a big part of my life, only to come find out like I don't even like sports. So I hear you. I've been there. So this really came up in a conversation within a coaching session inside of the Get Over Your Ex program today. And this call just in general was so good. We covered like 5 different topics, all breakup related with 4 amazing humans. And I was actually going to do this podcast on all of them, but it was such a long episode. I was like, we're not going to do this. So this beautiful Braveheart specifically brought up that she was feeling really disconnected to herself. This has been like a primary theme for her. And she felt lost and confused and almost stuck because she doesn't know who she is anymore. She really listed that off like a fact. Like, Dorothy, I just don't know who I am anymore. And it was really interesting because in the beginning of this coaching session with her, I got the sense that she didn't even want to talk about it. Like, she had heard herself say it so many times maybe that she was like, Dorothy, I've been pushing that away. I've been trying to find the things that I do love. I'm working on figuring it out. But for some reason, I couldn't just let it go. By this point, I had heard this particular Braveheart not only say this in writing multiple times, but also verbally. And I was like, boo, we got to coach on this. Are you open to coaching on this? Can we do this? Can we dive deep here? And she was all on board and it was amazing and awesome. So the interesting thing was I asked her, how do we know that you don't know who you are? Right? How do we actually know that? And your brain might want to come up with, I don't know. And so I really strongly suggest look at what your brain is pointing at. What is your brain pointing at in your life that makes you think you don't know who you are? And she mentioned that she doesn't know what activities she enjoys. Therefore, what that really means is a lack of enjoyment. So what's cool to see about this is we turn it into data. We were like, okay, how many activities have you tried? And how much % of enjoyment are you experiencing? So she identified that she has tried 60 activities in the last 3 months, and she has experienced enjoyment 25% of the time. Now, what's cool about this is then the question becomes, just because you don't experience enjoyment when doing activities, does that really mean you don't know who you are anymore? Because that's what a lot of us are doing. I don't find enjoyment in my life, Dorothy. Therefore, I just don't know who I am. Because I actually believe that there are people in the world who don't experience enjoyment, but also would say that they truly know who they are. So cool, right? And then the mind gets to move on from this. Not knowing who I am isn't the problem. You are the only person who knows who you are. I don't know who you are. Your best friend doesn't know who you are. You know you best. I never want you to outsource that. It's so easy to do, especially because I think I've been in relationships before where the person's like, I know you better than you know you. That's just a lie. I'd like to point that out for all of you. Your ex doesn't know you better than you know yourself. There's no one who knows you better than you, period. Now, that doesn't mean you don't feel lost or confused or stuck, but you don't have to make that mean you don't know who you are. Your mind will just have a field day with that sentence, with that story, and it gets you nowhere because ultimately the mind is just going to try to prove to you that you don't know who the fuck you are. It's a really terrible cycle to be in. It sucks. So the real problem for this Braveheart specifically was actually about enjoyment. And so then the statement becomes, I'm not enjoying my life, which creates disconnection. And this is something we can work on. This is something we can do a lot of amazingness with. We know exactly how to solve for this. We know what creates a feeling. We know what creates enjoyment or a lack thereof. Thoughts, right? Thoughts create feelings. The optional sentences in your brain is what's creating the emotional experience you're having right now, in the past, and in the future. So then the question becomes, why am I not feeling enjoyment in what I do? And she said, because I believe that if I'm not in a relationship, my life isn't worth living. Mic drop. Look at how well this Braveheart knows herself. All of which the mind was negating because it goes against her belief about her knowing herself. She knows that that is a belief that's in her subconscious, now in her awareness. That is what's playing. So of course, if we are telling ourselves that our life is not worth living if we aren't in a relationship, it doesn't matter what activity you try to do, you are not going to enjoy it, period. For real, can I say that again? If you are telling yourself that your life is not worth living if you aren't in a relationship, it doesn't matter what you do. Doing doesn't make you feel better. It's not an action that drives a feeling. It is a thought, a story. So she was trying everything. When we looked at her think, feel, act cycle, what was happening was she noticed that she was going in all the directions with no direction. And she wasn't experiencing enjoyment. Not because she doesn't know herself, but because the story she has playing in the background while she's trying all these different activities is that her life isn't worth living because she's not in a relationship. Bravehearts. I could be doing all my favorite things. I could be traveling the world, eating the best ice cream, petting an elephant, all with baby Marilyn. And if what was playing in the back of my head was, because I'm not in a relationship, my life isn't worth living, I'd experience very little to no enjoyment. It could be the best day ever, circumstance-wise, but if you have the worst thoughts about the best day ever, you will have the worst day ever. With a story like this, one of my favorite things to do is to ask myself what I would tell baby Marilyn. And for those of you who are new around here, baby Marilyn is my unborn child who I've been manifesting for forever. So ultimately, the question I asked this Braveheart is, what would you tell your daughter if she came to you and said, Mom, I feel like because I'm no longer in a relationship, my life isn't worth living. Like, so hard for me not to cry. It really puts things into perspective. And if you don't have a daughter or a son, think of like a child that you feel close to. And so I really asked, what would you tell your daughter if she said that? And what she said she would tell her daughter was profound, but I want you to think about what you would tell your loved one. I always think of talking to a child and what they would like, what would I say to a child here? And why is that not what I'm telling myself right now? Instead, we're telling ourselves these scary stories like we don't know who we are, or we don't know how to bring more enjoyment into our life, or I don't know who I am, right? Or the worst one, my life is not worth living. And here's what I found when I tapped into what would I say to baby Marilyn if she ever came to me saying my life is not worth living? And here's what I would say. Honey, You don't have to do a damn thing in your life to make your life worth living. Your life is everything. Literally, it's everything to me. It's everything to your father. It's worth living whether you're in a relationship or not. You have no idea the impact that you've already made in my life without you even being born. There are going to be so many flavors to life. All of them can be delicious if you allow them to be, even the ones you might not choose again. But we are here on this planet as human beings to have the human experience, the 50-50 experience. And just because you feel low right now doesn't mean you'll feel low tomorrow. And just because we experience the bottom half of the 50-50 or that negative emotion does not mean your life isn't worth living. And I know that this is hard, and I know you're going to get through it. So if nothing else today, my brave hearts, that's what I would say to you if you're in this situation. If you're feeling lost, if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling confused, directionless, disconnected, sad, defeated, afraid, or maybe even worthless. Your life is worth living. You are worthy for just existing. You were born 100% worthy, and there's nothing you can do about it. And here's what I need you to do today, okay? The first thing you need to look at is define the data that makes you think you don't know who you are. Is it a feeling you're not experiencing? Is it the number of things you've tried to fix yourself? Number 2, is it possible that data doesn't determine whether or not you know who you are? Most likely not. Number 3, what is it truly about? Is it a feeling you're going after? Is it an experience you're going after? And number 4, why do I feel this way? What are the stories that are driving either the lack of the emotion or the intensity of an emotion? And number 5, what would you tell your daughter or your loved one if he or she came to you and said what you're saying to yourself? Okay? Telling yourself that you of all people don't know who you are anymore just because of your breakup, because of your experience in your relationship, doesn't get you very far. You get stuck in lost and confused land, you spin, and no matter what action you take, it doesn't make you feel better because actions don't create feelings. The real solution is getting very clear about what feeling it is you're going for and what stories are driving the lack of that feeling. And then, most importantly, giving yourself the advice you would give a child. All right, my brave hearts, I love you so much. I hope you have an amazing week, and I will talk to you next time. If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you want to learn how to get over your ex in 3 months or less to build a life better than the one you thought you had with your ex, I would like to personally invite you to my next group course where we take everything you've learned here on the podcast and apply it to your life. Come check it out at www.lifecoachdorothy.com.